The John Muir Trust has culled more than £100,000 worth of deer on a single highland estate. It used out-of-season licences to shoot animals on Muntjac in Sutherland. It's a blow for the Ascent Crofters Trust, or ACT, that depends on the animals for its commercial deer stalking operation. Crofters used a Freedom of Information request to find out the full extent of what the Trust have been doing.
It's still a lot of deer. 100 stags is a lot. Those are the animals with some value. So they've certainly hurt their neighbours to the west by doing that. But they've done enough to irritate people. And those 110 stags are potentially worth £100,000. And they've effectively just reduced the value of those by, 95%. So that's not good.
We think the cull numbers are reasonable. We're in a context of a general recognition from the Scottish Government through all sections of society. Most political parties, most of Civic Scotland recognises that deer numbers in Scotland are too high, and they have been for a long time, and that affects our ability to utilise the vast areas of land that we have, which is of low agricultural productivity, but it's got immense potential to sequester carbon and contribute to biodiversity targets.
JMT culled 110 stags, 7 hinds and 2 calves.
But the thing I do notice about the figures is they've shot a lot less hinds than they did last year. So I think in terms of managing the deer population, they've failed to target the animals that would make a difference. So the hinds, it's them that produce the population. So if you want less deer, ultimately, you've got to target the hinds, and they didn't do that.
We don't accept that it harms the local economy. Deer numbers have doubled over the course of the past 20 years. There has been no increase in the number of jobs. There's been no growth in economic activity associated with deer. And there is absolutely no evidence to suggest that reducing deer numbers in the scale that we've reduced them will have any impact whatsoever on the local economy. There's still hundreds of stags in Muntjac. There's more here than there are in any other parts of Scotland, in most other parts of Scotland.
The Trust claims the cull is to help protect woodland.
The deer that gather at Muntjac, because Muntjac is a wild area, remote, no roads nearby, nobody lives there, then a lot of deer congregate in Muntjac and devour the seedlings, some of which are planted by local school children. So that's our first point, and that's what we're concerned about, is the land that we manage. But it will have a wider impact, for the better, we would say, across the peninsula as a whole. There are local community organisations who have expressed quite serious concern about deer numbers, about ticks, about Lyme disease, about road collisions, about damage to crops, about damage to gardens, about damage even to children's play parks. And so there are a lot of people agree with what we are doing. There is some people disagree, and we respect their right to disagree, but they're not the only voices in this, and there are a lot of people want this to happen and think it will benefit the wider community as a whole.
I think they would actually have been better sticking with their previous employee. He was doing a much better job. And I think if they'd stuck with him, they would have a much, much better chance of actually achieving success, because he was shooting the deer that were actually doing damage in the woods. This time around, I suspect most of those deer will never have been in the woods at all. And, therefore they've just went to waste. So it's not a good strategy. I think if you're serious about regenerating the woods in Ascent, it's not the way to do it. There's too much waste, too much noise, too much irritation to everybody else.
The Countryside Alliance in Scotland is concerned about the long-term impact of out-of-season culls across Scotland.
There's no argument that the government have targets to meet for both tree planting and for deer cull as well. What we would ask is that any cull, particularly one of this scale as well, is planned in accordance with the local communities and the deer management groups in that locality. Deer range, so you're not just taking the deer from one particular ground, you'll be taking the deer that are transient over 2, 3, 4 large pieces of ground. So this is a community project, or this should be a community project, and the deer management groups locally should be fully involved.
JMT has announced the purchase of a 45-acre site at Cuniag. It wants to create a community and visitor hub.
We've just made a 7-figure investment into a part of Assynt, which we believe will open up fantastic opportunities for businesses to be created, for jobs to be created, for affordable housing to be developed, for cultural facilities to be established. And we want to work with the local community. We're going to work with the local community, hopefully with every section of the local community, whatever differences they might have with the John Muir Trust.
It is a good place for catching North Coast 500 traffic. Yeah, I would imagine it's pretty good for that. But hopefully they'll take time and they'll work out what they might be able to do with that.
Now, we know how important tourism is for Scotland, but with the acquisition of a 45-acre site for the John Muir Trust to build what they call a tourism hub, could be quite disturbing for deer. There's potential for them being pushed off feeding grounds, off breeding grounds, and pushed basically out of their natural habitat and natural areas for ranging. So this is also worrying. Communities will benefit from tourism, there's no way about that, but this really has to be carefully thought about.
JMT is launching a consultation to encourage local people to have their say on the future of the site.
To me, it's obviously part of a PR drive. You know, they're trying to get, I think this whole argument about the deer cull has been very difficult for JMT. I expect it's probably been quite bruising for them. And they're trying to get people back on site again, I guess. So they're trying to maybe just shift the focus of the discussion, try and do something that might be interesting to people locally, maybe do something that would generate some alternative employment. So if they can do those things, that's a good thing.
We want to work with everybody, and we're opening a community consultation and feasibility study to examine what can be achieved with this investment that we've already made, and the potential to multiply that investment in the coming years. So we think we are going to open up tremendous opportunities for the people of Assynt in the next period.
The latest purchase may be seen as JMT's olive branch to help the local economy. But the battle between crofters and the conservation industry is far from over. They disagree about how they should manage the land and what crofters need in order to survive independently.